Taraxa project, and thank you very much for tuning in to our Bridge AMA. This is a special AMA that we've set up since we just launched the Bridge last week. We wanted to dedicate a specific AMA to talking about the whys and what's of the bridge. Why did we build it? What's special about it? What are its goals going forward? And typically, just as an administrative update, typically we have our monthly developer update, progress update AMAs on Thursday of each month at exactly the same time. So if this is the first time you're tuning in, please mark your calendars. We will for the monthly AMA. All right, so let's get into the bridge, right? So the Ficus root bridge was deployed and activated as of last week. And with so many bridges in the market today, why did we go out and build another bridge, especially when that took quite a bit of time to build? Well, when we were back, I think in 2021, 2022, basically, I think a year before we deployed our mainnet, we started to look for bridge integration. So after the 2020-21 cycle, DeFi didn't exist before then, and DeFi suddenly started to exist. And on-chain DeFi, on-chain liquidity suddenly became extremely important, and there were bridges basically springing up everywhere. Now, we always believed that there would be a multi-ecosystem, multi-chain world, simply because each ecosystem represented specific use cases. So by the towards the end of the last cycle in 2022, it was pretty clear that having a bridge inside a layer one ecosystem is no longer optional. Right? You just had to have one, otherwise, people are going to be sharding their liquidity when building on top of their ecosystem. So we started looking for a bridge integration, and the issue that we ran into was that basically all the major bridges on the market at the time, and I think still the case today, is that they're dominated by bridges that are permissioned. They're not decentralized, they're permissioned. What does that mean? It means that if you want to get on the bridge, you had to ask the permission of the bridge's development team. You have to ask for the permission of, for example, a DAO. They can kick you off anytime they want, right? They can just decide to offload your asset, kick you off anytime they want. A lot of these bridges actually also have traffic quotas that you actually have to fulfill. Like you actually had to have a certain amount of transactions on the bridge, and as well as a certain amount of value being transferred across the bridge, or you get kicked off. And they also reserve the right to charge you an extremely high fee or any fees they feel like anytime they want, right? So none of these seem very reasonable in the world of Web3, but that's where we are. Most bridges are heavily permissioned. So bridging is clearly not in a very good place, and much of Web3 has become increasingly centralized, as we can see by the types of projects that are coming out, getting funded, and being promoted. People don't really seem to care about decentralization. Taraxa has always been built on the foundation of decentralization, something that we're extremely committed to. So we decided to build a fully permissionless bridge in which you don't need to ask anyone's permission to use or deploy or connect to the bridge. Okay. So we built it and we deployed it. What can we use the bridge for? Well, the first thing obviously you can use it for is to use it to transfer assets, right, between the Ethereum and Taraxa ecosystems. We picked Ethereum to connect to because obviously it's the biggest ecosystem around, has the most liquidity, most assets, most DApps, most of everything. So it was natural, no-brainer to actually bridge into Ethereum. Taraxa is, of course, also EVM compatible, 100% EVM compatible. So that makes bridging to Ethereum makes just a lot more sense. So first, of course, you can bridge assets. Second, you can also bridge data. And data is something very interesting because you can actually build cross-chain oracles. Maybe there are certain DApps, such as the Taraxa Echo platform that only really exist on one specific ecosystem, and their data and their can be funneled into Oracle on-chain oracles to help trigger, I think, smart contracts in other ecosystems. So that will also be very very interesting. The third thing I think would be very interesting to use the bridge for is to use Taraxa as some sort of a, you know, sort of like a layer two to process transactions with periodic settlements back into Ethereum to make sure that liquidity and pricing are synchronized. So this way, the apps building on top of Taraxa, for example, no longer need to choose between Taraxa or Ethereum. They can have their entire liquidity and asset class unsharded, maintained as a single pool, and enables cross chain ecosystems, right? So where communities can actually interact with one another across these different networks. So, what are some of the unique features, right? We already mentioned this. The whole reason why we started building the Ficus Root Bridge is that it's 100% permissionless. So anyone can deploy any asset they want. They can deploy any data they want across these things. They can add new networks if they wanted to. That's a lot more complicated and sophisticated if they want to do that. But all the architecture is there. It would require them to build new light clients on top of other networks, but all the architectures there, they're free to they're free to connect to it. Everything is completely open source, right? From the on-chain contracts, the light clients, the connectors, the bridging contract, the relayers that actually relay data and monitor data across different ecosystems, even the UI, right? Everything about the bridge is open source. So if you want, you can actually just take it and just deploy your own version if you don't like our deployment for whatever reason. 100% permissionless, right? That is a very unique feature of the Taraxa Ficus Root Bridge that you can't really find really in a lot of places today. I think you'd be hard, very, very, I think it'd be very hard to find something else like this, right, in today's highly centralized world. And because everything is done on chain, right? The security of the entire bridge is actually secured by the layer one consensus across each network, right? So it's actually secured by the Taraxa consensus network as well as the Ethereum consensus network. What that means is that it doesn't really need a huge network of its own. Another kind of feature of these highly permissioned bridges that we see today is that they often, if they're not outright sent, some sort of a funny multi-sig wallet, which is not even a bridge. There's some sort of a these permission networks tend to be actively validated, so they themselves actually require an extremely large network to claim any kind of security guarantees. But because Taraxa's Ficus Root Bridge is fully, is fully on chain, it doesn't actually need a network, right? All you really need is one or two relayers for redundancy purposes. Relayers can't really cheat in any meaningful way. Even if you just have one relayer, that relayer cannot cheat. Okay, so because everything again is verified and validated on chain by the consensus algorithms on each respective ecosystem. So this is again great, right? Because if you ended up having to build another network, then you have to find nodes, you have to provide incentives, and it's just another huge amount of work, right? So fully on chain, 100% permissionless, which means it's decentralized by default, right? And it's secured by the layer one consensus, not some other consensus network, right? It's fully transparent because everything's done on chain. You can see exactly what's happening with every single transaction, right? In the process of building the bridge, because you need to actually anchor the states of Taraxa onto Ethereum, as well as from Ethereum onto Taraxa. In that process, we're actually adding another security guarantee for the Taraxa network against long-range attacks. So proof of stake systems have this theoretical attack. It's never been actually done before, but there are a lot of academic papers out there proposing a theoretical attack called long range attacks. We won't go into details. Basically, it's an attack vector that's very difficult to guard against, unless you're pulling in other ecosystems, other larger or just alternative ecosystem to actually guard the integrity of your historical state, which is what we're doing, right? Because in the process of bridging, all the Taraxa state are getting anchored onto the Ethereum network. So now that effectively guards against long range attacks because any new participant of the Taraxa network, layer one network, can just check against the state that actually is being anchored onto Ethereum to note whether or not they've been partitioned or being lied to in a typical long range attack. So that's another great, I would say, side effect, right, of having a bridge. Another piece of infrastructure that we built for the for the bridge actually makes it possible later on to build a network of networks, which we're going to call subgraphs in the Taraxa network. So this is something I think is also very interesting. This is a much longer term project. It's not going to happen soon, but we're going after the bridge is deployed. We're going to take out some time to do some research R&D into this topic. I think it makes sense that every single DApp, you see that every DApp, once they reach a certain amount of traction, a certain size community, they start wanting to deploy their own layer one, for example. And it's not non-trivial, right, to build your own layer one, especially for a team that hasn't really spent time building it. And I think it makes sense for people to deploy their own layer one on top of an existing one and actually borrow the security guarantees of that existing network, but also at the same time have a sense of ownership and governance of that specific shard, right? So this is what actually the bridge's architecture actually enables that on the Taraxa network. It's going to take some time, but obviously it's a very exciting development because this piece of infrastructure technology is very versatile. Right? So these are all very interesting, unique features and of the Taraxa Ficus root bridge, right? 100% permissionless, fully decentralized without having an extremely large network. It's secured by layer one consensus instead of another random consensus network. Fully transparent, fully on-chain, secures the Taraxa network against long-range attacks, and it sets up the infrastructure for Taraxa's future subgraph network of network architecture, right? All right, so we talked about all the great things. What are some trade-offs, right? So obviously in the world of engineering and just, in nature, nothing's free. You get something, you always trade off something else, right? So being fully on-chain means that we're actually subject to the extremely high gas fees in Ethereum. So it's not surprising. Everyone knows gas fees on Ethereum are crazy and they can spike up really, really quickly. I think we saw a huge spike just about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, where the gas price went, I think, well above 300. Right, so it was pretty crazy. Right now, it's much more reasonable. I think single digits. So being fully on chain means that we are subject to Ethereum's extremely high fees, right? So because this is a fully permissionless bridge that is whose validation and verification are all done on chain, it means that there's a lot of complex computations going on chain. Now they're going on Taraxa and they're going on Ethereum because Taraxa is just so cheap. Everything's essentially costs nothing. We don't even ever need to worry about the fees on Taraxa. It's the Ethereum fees that we have to worry about, right? So there's lots of complex computations. Periodically the relayer has to anchor the states across the two ecosystems, and that's what's really driving, I think, the higher than the fees that look a bit high, right? It's all driven by Ethereum, and there's nothing we can do about the fees on Ethereum. But I think there are some things that we could potentially do to help lower the fees. During the process of building the bridge, I think the development team have some clever tricks that we haven't tried yet, right? So there's a few clever engineering ideas that we have down the road where we can potentially lower the fees. Now, the fees are never going to be like sort of nothing like they are on like they're on Taraxa, right? So there'll always be some non-trivial fees, but we can try to lower them through some clever engineering down the road. So that's something that definitely is it's a prioritized item. Obviously, the lower the fees are, the more likely people are to use it, right? So being fully permissionless also means that obviously there's no review process, right, for what people connect to the bridge. So that's why we also needed to building a few economic guardrails against people randomly spamming spamming the bridge, for example. So when someone is connecting a new asset onto the bridge contract, there is a non-trivial fee, right? You have to pay a non-trivial fee to connect a new asset, and that fee is not really there to do anything else other than to prevent spamming, because adding into the bridge via connector, adding asset into the connector increases the size of the state that needs to be processed, needs to be analyzed, needs to be verified every single time. So it actually increases the cost of the bridge forever. Now, adding one is probably not that big a deal, but imagine if there are no connecting fees. So somebody just adds in like a million, right, using a bot or something. That's a lot of money. So there needs to be economic guardrails, and there are. That's why there's a non-trivial fee for someone to deploy a connector. And again, it's not meant to make money for anyone. It's just there to make sure that the bridge doesn't get spammed. All right. So these are some of the trade-offs. I think overall, the fees are when we designed the bridge, what we expected was that there's not going to be kind of like a high frequency going back and forth between the two ecosystems. I think the only use case we can think of for someone wanting an extremely high frequency trading or shuffling of assets between them is really arbitraging, I think, between DeFi protocols. And if people want to do that, they could do that by setting up kind of like slush funds on both sides in order to achieve that. What we mostly anticipate people using the bridge is really to bridge over assets, to do some processing, and there will be periodic resettlements and rebalancing across the liquidity pools that exist in the separate ecosystems of Ethereum and Taraxa. So periodic resettlement and balancing is the primary use case we envision, not high frequency arbitraging, which I don't I think very few people use anyway. So all right, what's coming up, right? In terms of development, we're definitely going to develop more asset connectors such as stablecoins. So every time we deploy asset connectors, we do a lot of tests. It's pretty easy to do, but I think the testing does take a while, right? So we want to be very, very careful, because especially with something like stablecoin, that's like real money, right? So nothing can really go wrong, and so we want to make sure everything looks really, really good when we do something like that. So we do a lot of testing, but obviously more asset connectors are coming. Also, just because the bridge has been deployed doesn't mean the testing stops, right? We're going to keep testing and stress testing the bridge again to really make sure nothing goes wrong. It is a bridge with assets on it, so we can't afford to have anything go wrong there. And of course, like I mentioned before, we're going to be prioritizing performance and cost optimizations to try to lower the cost of bridging, right? Lower the cost and hopefully and maybe also improve the latency. But those are more of a kind of engineering optimizations there. All right. So what's coming up for DeFi? Obviously, the bridge is used mostly for DeFi, right? So more DeFi applications are coming. We mentioned this, I think, in all of our announcements. There's going to be more DEXs coming, synthetic stablecoins, oracles, all kinds of stuff coming onto the Taraxa DeFi ecosystem. And so these are, once the bridge is done, we're going to have more time to build up a few of the other, I think, critical pieces of DeFi infrastructure, so that we can have something a bit more healthy to kind of go on. Obviously, DeFi, can be empty, so we're working with members of the community to make sure that there are pools and there are incentives for these pools. So pretty obvious, right? More DeFi DApps and more pools, right? So coming up for developing general, the bridge, I think, for the Taraxa developing is going to be really the last huge piece of infrastructure technology we built in a while. We've been building nonstop for the past 6 years, building a lot of large-scale infrastructural technologies. We're very proud of what we built. I think we need to get a lot more focus around the team in terms of spending a lot more time driving adoption, doing a lot more optimization, and of course more testing. Right, because you can never run too many tests. So yeah, that's mostly what's coming up for development in general. Okay, so we wanted to do this, kind of a quick AMA, just or quick in-depth AMA for the bridge on its own. So hopefully that's helpful. We published a lot of articles and tweets about the bridge, but we never really had I think an entire AMA specifically dedicated to it. So hopefully that answers some of your questions about the bridge and our development in general. All right, so now on to the more general questions that we've been receiving on our social channels. So before I, go address each question individually, obviously there's still a lot of questions, right, about marketing initiatives. And so in terms of marketing, there are two basic parts, right? So the first part is obviously you have something to market, right? There's more content, you put it in more places. The second one, I think it's the most important one, is amplification of that message, right? For the first one, we've onboarded writers into our team to actually help to spread the message a bit more, right? So writing more content and putting it onto more, just more platforms, right? So this is going to take a little bit of time because a project like Taraxa takes quite a bit of time to actually understand. So we'll talk a bit about that later because I think there was a question actually specifically asking about getting more Taraxa content onto more social platforms. But we have onboarded people, and they're being, they're slowly acclimating to all the content that we have, and understanding our technologies, understanding our products, understanding how we talk about these things. Yeah, so that's something we're definitely going to be doing. We are doing that, and hopefully we'll see some results soon. The second topic is obviously amplification. So as I've talked about before, our primary goal on the amplification side remains the same, which is to try to secure collaboration with large and reputable KOLs, right? So this is something we're constantly trying to do. We're constantly adding new channels, which means we're signing contracts with a lot of PR agencies. Now, I think there might be some misunderstanding about what this means. When you sign with a PR agency, it's not like a magic switch, right? You just turn it on and there's PR everywhere. That's not how it works, because these large KOLs, these large reputable KOLs, you still gotta pitch them, right? If we just contact these KOLs ourselves, we get ignored, right? We tried that many times. So you gotta go through channels. These are kind of warm referrals. But just because they're warm referrals doesn't mean it's guaranteed that the KOLs will work with us. So we're doing a lot of pitching, right? Yeah, so how quickly these KOLs respond to us, if they respond to us at all, is really not something that we can control. The only thing that we can do is to sign a lot more of these specialized PR agencies that have access to large KOLs and just keep on pitching through them, right? that's really the best thing that we can do. Getting more channels, pitching to more large reputable KOLs, right? So again, I just really want to emphasize that these KOLs are very selective, right? As they should be. If you're a KOL that's not selective, right, and a PR agency comes to you and say, I guarantee you can work with this KOL, it's guaranteed that that KOL is not reputable and they're not big, right? If you're somebody working on social media and you just take money from just any random person to talk about whatever they paid you to talk about, that's not going to be a sustainable strategy for you, right? You're not going to have a good reputation. Chances are your account will probably just die out very, very quickly, right? There are a lot of PR agencies. They come to you. They're like, we have a list of like 100 KOLs you can work with. You look up those 100 KOLs. They're low quality, right? Because you should pay them and they work with you. They don't really even ask any questions. That's just not, how it works. So for transparencies, right? Like, so I keep saying large reputable KOLs. What does that mean, right? How do you determine if a KOL is large or reputable? So it is extremely difficult to quantify that, right? And we've been looking for ways to quantify that for a while. We found a tool actually a few months ago, and we we looked into a lot of different tools, but this tool I think is very interesting. It's a tool called Twitter Score. So you can actually go on the website twitterscore.io. They actually take every single Twitter account and give it a score. So it's very, very interesting. We don't know obviously the exact algorithm that it uses, but given the kind of data they display on the dashboard for each Twitter account, we believe that the algorithm they use is mostly driven by the quality of the followers, right? So it's a typical way of building kind of a network of trust is that you start out with a set of known people, right? Known variables, and you assign them, some weight, and you propagate that through the network so that you can start assigning weights to, unknown accounts, unknown variables. So it's an iterative process, but it's a tried and true process. Fundamentally speaking, put it in another way that's much simpler is that you can tell the quality of any social account by the quality of the people who follow them, right? So I think that's a very reasonable way. That's the way that we actually tell them, and that's the way a lot of people tell, right? And I'm sure they take into account things like follower growth patterns, things like that. So we think it's very reasonable. We did a lot of checking against intuition, and it makes sense, right? So for reference, if you go on twitterscore.io, you'll see that Taraxa has a score of 18. My own account, Readboy, has a score of 9. Okay, so not very high scores, but that's for a point of reference. If you go into these PR agencies, right, and they'll say, hey, here's a list of 200 KOLs you can work with, just pay us, you can work with them, and you look up those KOLs, they all have extremely low scores, single digit or extremely low double digit scores, right? So most of them have lower scores than our own Taraxa account, which is completely pointless, right? If you think about it, if you want to amplify your message, you want to work with people whose scores are at least one order of magnitude, which means 10x, right, higher than what you're working with. So that's the goal, right? Again, people are asking, what do you mean? What is a large reputable KOL? Well, 10x the score, right? Someone who has scores of 170, 160, 180, above 200. These are the people we want to work with because we believe, now we don't know for sure, but we believe that this is going to bring meaningful traffic, right? Meaningful attention to the Taraxa ecosystem. We've done a lot of testing in the past, starting last year and coming to this year. We worked with a lot of different KOLs, but back then we didn't really have a way to kind of measure them. Once we had a way of measuring them, we started testing, adding like a large number of these low score KOLs, and they produce no visible difference, right? They produce no visible impact. So if you're working with a whole bunch of KOLs with single digit scores or like low double digit scores, like 15 or whatever, or 20. You can work with 10 of them, or you can work with 50 of them. It doesn't really make a difference, right? So I'm trying hard to explain to you guys the thinking process here. So you have to be able to quantify the people that you're working with. You can't just blindly walk into something and be like, let pay you a bunch of money, and then nothing gets done, right? Nothing gets done. So this is the way we're quantifying this, and we're going after KOLs with scores that are at least 10x, right? 10x of what our account is, right? So that's something we've never been able to do because we never really gone after people with extremely high scores, because number one, we've never been able to figure out the scores until we figure out the Twitter score website. And number two, obviously these larger, more reputable KOLs are very difficult to reach, right? So it's not easy to get their attention. It's not easy to secure their partnership. So that's what we're focusing all of our attention on in terms of message amplification, finding high quality, large KOLs to work with to help amplify our message, introduce a lot more people to Taraxa's technology and ecosystem, right? Anything beyond that just doesn't work. It produces no measurable outcome, no measurable results. We've also seen a lot of people asking about what Marie is doing. Marie is our marketing advisor. She used to be the CMO of Gate. So a lot of these connections that you hear us talking about, hiring people, training people, getting referrals, right, to PR agencies and stuff like that, getting referrals to AKOLs. Marie is really the primary driving force behind all these introductions, right? Without her making these intros, we would not have access to all of these resources, right? So she's doing a lot. She's really upgraded, our entire. She's given us access to a lot of resources we never had before, fundamentally. So that's what she's been up to, right? All right. So let's get into the specific questions here. First question, when are we going to have other assets like stablecoins? Well, we just talked about it. That's something that's coming up. We're going to be deploying that. I can't tell you exactly which date it's going to happen, because like I said, we thoroughly test every single thing that we deploy. But it's a top of priority list. The actual action of bridging, of connecting another asset, it's pretty simple, because obviously our connectors are written to be natively compatible for any ERC20 contract. But the testing of it is it does take a lot of time, and it can be unpredictable. So, like I said, connecting a new asset onto the bridge, anything having to do with the bridge is just should be done very, very carefully. Okay, it shouldn't be done with haste and without testing. So that's something that we're obviously intend to do. But yeah, so getting more assets, um, deployed on the bridge is a top priority, right? It's not that difficult to do. It's just that we need to test it, right? Very, very carefully. Okay, the second question is, when are we going to bridge to other chains? We don't have any plans to bridge into other chains for now. Okay, so I think that could be a long-term plan. It's not something that we're going to be doing in the short term. So the reason is several reasons. First of all, we just bridged to Ethereum. The whole point of the bridge is to create some kind of synergy, right? Whether it's getting liquidity in, getting liquidity out, or doing whatever. Let's focus on actually getting use out of it, right? Let's focus on actually getting some use out of this. Ethereum is the largest ecosystem in the world, right? The largest Web3 decentralized ecosystem in the world. It has the most assets, most liquidity, most everything, really. Let's make something happen there, right? Before we start blindly going out building more. We're not in the Taraxa is not in the business of building bridges. We're not like a bridge company, right? So the goal is to, if we can make use of the largest, most liquid ecosystem in the world, what's the point of bridging to other ecosystems, right? So let's make sure we can take advantage as much as we can of the Ethereum ecosystem here, before we even think about getting into other ecosystems. Yeah. I mean, the other thing is that like bridging into new ecosystems for a fully permissionless bridge is a non-trivial process because you need to write light clients, and you write all these state verification code algorithms for every single ecosystem you deploy into. So in the engineering side of things is non-trivial. So anyway, we have the Ethereum bridge. Let's make sure we make good use of it. Okay. Marketing, update info in a lot of different socials. Yeah, so we do have more writers coming into the team. So I think we talked about this before. They're getting onboarded into understanding better Taraxa's ecosystem, Taraxa's technologies, our products. It's not easy to understand, right? It does take some time, but we've onboarded more resources to be able to spread our message to a lot more different, a lot more different channels, right? So that's basically it. Okay, so there's this question that asks about all the DApps in the ecosystem, whether or not there's going to be an ecosystem map, and are we going to be doing more AMAs with the developers of ecosystem projects, right? So this is pretty long answer that we're going to give here. Okay, so they specifically asked about Lara and Fusi, and so let's just go one by one, right? So Lara, as far as I know, Lara on the engineering side is actually done, right? So what we're waiting for is that in order for Lara to work, there needs to be a small upgrade to the on-chain DPoS contract for the Taraxa Layer 1. So this Layer 1 upgrade is going to be another high priority task for the Ledger team, because everyone on the team, top to bottom, was focused on the bridge. And now that the bridge is deployed, again, it doesn't mean we completely abandon it. There's still going to be more testing, more asset deployment, all kinds of optimizations and stuff like that. But it's not like every single person's attention is 100% focused on the bridge anymore. We're going to have free up some resources to to prioritize definitely the activation of the Layer protocol, right? We're going to be having several, I think, in-depth meetings in the coming weeks to prioritize our engineering tasks, and activation of the Layer protocol is definitely a top priority here. Liquid staking is incredibly important. Again, something new that came out of the last DeFi cycle, but it's very important to any Layer 1 ecosystem, and it can really help to bootstrap TVL, right, for any emerging DeFi ecosystem. So top priority here. Fusi. So Fusi, for those of you who don't know, Fusi.app is a DEX that was deployed on Taraxa. I think they're having some issues, right, with their DEX. And we're aware of these issues. Obviously, we're talking to them to make sure that they get those problems fixed, make it more stable, make it more polished. So that's something that they're aware of too. Yeah, so I think both the Taraxa team and the Lara team were a bit disappointed, right, with the way things are going this week, and with regards to Fusi, right? But I think they know what's going on, and they're gonna fix it, right? So let's just wait for them to get everything polished up. All right, so more projects. So I think yeah, this question also asked about every single project that won awards in the hackathon, right? Okay, so let's just go through them. So Trixie, the last time we talked to their team, they said that they have their their project done already, but they're kind of waiting for like a good market conditions to launch their product. I mean, it's their project, right? So I think that's fine. But their team is pretty responsive. So let's see. TerraSwap. So TerraSwap is working hard to deliver the they delivered a demo. So I think they're going to deliver a more fully functional product. So it's going to be a Uniswap version 3 DEX with composite incentives. And so it's really kind of modern DeFi, right? So I think that's going to be very, very important for the Taraxa DeFi ecosystem. So we're constantly talking to them. They're pretty responsive, but they want to kind of remain anonymous. I'm not sure if we're going to want to do any AMAs, but I think they're going to be pretty responsive in terms of responding to community questions once they do launch, at least in their Telegram group. So they are pretty responsive when we talk to them. So big hopes for that project. There's another one called Terraland, right, which is basically an ecosystem map. That's actually part of the question. So I think the Terraland is done because we've actually seen the website. It's not like a super complicated website. We're actually helping them to collect a lot of information around ecosystem projects, so we can actually help them populate that site. Once they get up and going, I think they're going to be a lot more self-sustaining. Pretty cool. We definitely need an ecosystem map, right? So that's definitely coming. Yeah. And their project is done. I think they're going to launch basically whenever our official rebranded website launches, which will be very soon. Since again, after the bridge, we all have more time to work on things that are not bridge related. So hopefully we can launch that pretty soon, along with the Terraland ecosystem map project. So there are two other winners. I don't remember their names, but I think there's one that's a gaming project, and another one that has this facial ID project. So unfortunately, they became unresponsive after the hackathon. So this kind of stuff happens, right? Every single hackathon, this kind of stuff happens. Some projects are serious about building things. Some projects are not so serious. They're just kind of going around getting hackathon money. So, again, it happens to every hackathon. We're not too surprised it's happening here as well. And we got a few other really great projects out of it. So we're overall, we're pretty happy, right? So anyway. And we're trying to do AMAs with all the projects, right? Literally, that's the job of layer one, right? Is to really talk about the project. We've done a lot of AMAs already with Lara, with Fusi, with Trendspotter. I think we were just talking to Terra.2, the first and only community built and maintained Explorer. So we're talking to them to see if we can do an AMA with them to. I think they need to get a few things ready, but we'd love to talk to more projects. If you are running a project, or if you know someone else who's running a project wants to do an AMA, let us know. We'll get you on the schedule, right? Definitely happy to talk to builders in the ecosystem. There's nothing really preventing that from happening. So in the process of actually populating Terraland, which is the ecosystem map website. We're also going to be collecting contact information for all the project teams. Hopefully, we are able to do that once we get that mapped out. So that information obviously is to make it easy for the community to know where to go if you have questions about any specific application, the app. And for us, it's going to be great to know, who do we talk to, right, for any specific project. I think there are quite a few projects for whom we don't actually even know who the founders are. So be a good exercise again with Terraland to actually put all of that onto a map. And then we'll be proactively reaching out. And hey, what are you doing? Do you need help? Right? Do you need help with anything? Do you want to do an AMA? Whatever. Right? To fully support the ecosystem projects. Again, that's literally the job of the layer one. Right? Is to offer great infrastructure technology and whatever support we can do to projects building on top of us. Yeah. So again, a shout out to Swap, right? We'd love to do an AMA with you if you're out there. I think I dropped a link to a Calendly link to set up a meeting. So please get on a call with us. Love to know what you're doing. Love to know what your plans are. I'd love to coordinate with you guys, whatever, right? Whatever you guys want to do. So yeah, definitely get in touch with us. All right. pools, right? Everyone wants to ask about pools, right? Are there going to be pools for this or for that? So the official answer, I'm going to keep on giving the official answer because that's what the lawyers tell me to do. So we're working with members of the community to facilitate the setting up of pools and incentives for those pools, right? That's what we're doing. um, so this question specifically asks about, I think, Uniswap. So another side note is that in addition to setting up pools, you also need to set up arbitrage bots, right? Because obviously, DEXs are disconnected with centralized exchanges, and you don't want to see problems happening where there's significant price difference, right, between different marketplaces. So in addition to working with the community members to set up pools, to facilitate them setting up the pools, we are also trying to help them with the technical side of setting up arbitrage bots as well. These things have to be there. If you don't have active arbitraging while setting up pools, you're going to run into a lot of problems. You're just going to run into a lot of problems. So that's another tech stuff that we need to kind of worry about. My personal opinion, obviously, is that Uniswap is very large, right? Has a very large user base. It's definitely a good idea. It's a great idea to have a presence there, right? That's my personal opinion. All right. Rebranding. The rebranding is done, and we're updating the main website right now. There is a new logo, right? The current logo obviously doesn't looks a little bit out of place with the new branding, so we had to change it. Again, like I said before, now that we've deployed the bridge, everyone's gonna have more time to work on non-bridge related stuff, and the website is one of them. So that should be coming out soon, along with the Terraland ecosystem map, right? One of the goals that we have with specifically the new logo is that the current logo has always had this issue of not being extremely visible when it's small, right? I think most of the time when people see a project's logo, it's actually when it's really small on some large list somewhere. So the current logo doesn't really show up that well as a very small icon. So we're definitely fixing that, and it's definitely in line with all the other designs, right? So there's this whole kind of branding identity guide and everything. We're going to publish all of that, obviously, when the new website is completed. Yeah, so that's definitely coming up. Okay, the next question asks about like the visualizer actually. So yeah, so we haven't forgotten about the visualizer. So earlier in the year, really early in the year, we actually hired a contractor to work on the visualizer. For those of you who don't know, a visualizer is something that turns the on-chain, the architectural activities on-chain, right? Blocks, pointers, DAG blocks, transactions, PBFT blocks, all that kind of stuff. I turn them into something visual so people can actually see it. We think a visualizer is pretty important because it's something that can help people understand the technical differentiations of the Taraxa network versus other layer one networks. Okay. So this contractor we hired actually, I think was it took him a long time, right? So he's still not done yet. It's supposed to take a few weeks, but I think he dragged it on for like many, many, many months. And we weren't really kind of on top of that because again, the bridge was draining everybody's time. I mean, everyone has been working nonstop since last year on the bridge, and everything else got kind of deprioritized. So this person is still working on it. The reason why we outsource this task is because the to build an effective visualizer, you actually need specialized graphical frameworks, right? The one that's being used by the Casper visualizers is something called Pixie.js. So this front-end framework is mostly used to make in-browser games, right? Obviously, gaming requires extremely efficient in-browser rendering. So if you just built it out of normal JavaScript, it's going to be very slow and laggy, and that's what the old version was. I think we built that in 2019, so quite a long time ago. We are still actively working with this contractor. I think they're almost done. There are a few things we might want to add to it, but we haven't forgotten about the visualizer, so we're gonna continue to churn on it. I can't say that the visualizer is extremely high priority for us because there seems like there's a lot of other things that are much more mission critical. But because we've been working on it for so long, or this contractor's been working on it for so long, we do need to make sure that it gets out, soon. And yeah, so this contractor is good at coding. I'm not sure if he's so good at designing. So we might also need to get some design on top of it as well. So anyway, definitely gonna have more time to get back to it now that the bridge has been deployed. So we haven't forgotten about the visualizer. It's something that we've been working with this contractor on in an ongoing basis. And now that the bridge is deployed, we're gonna have more time to kind of get back to all these other non-bridge related tasks. So yeah, gonna haven't forgotten about that. We're working on it. Where's the audit report for the bridge? So the audit report is being prepared by TrailBits. Before we deploy the bridge, so way before we deploy the bridge, right? After they've given us their recommendations, we very quickly made all the changes and we submitted our changes to TrailBits. And so we talked to them on Slack all the time. And they said that everything looks great. They approve of all the changes. They just need to make the report. So we got that okay, go ahead. I think a week or so before we deployed the bridge, or 2 weeks before that. Anyway, we made sure that TrailBits was okay with everything we did verbally. And so their lead dev said, they reviewed all our changes to the recommendations, our fixes to the recommendations. They've approved all of them. No problem. Everything looks great. They just need time to prepare for the report. So we're like, all right, fine. From an engineering perspective, it's fine to go ahead to deploy the bridge since the auditor, the engineering lead of the auditor said everything looks great. Okay, so we deployed the bridge. They still haven't finished the report. The last time we talked to them was, I think, Monday of this week. They said they're still writing it. Not really sure why it's taking so long to write the report. But we deployed. But the key message takeaway from here is the bridge before deployment, well before deployment, we got the okay from TrailBits verbally. They said they're okay with all of our changes. We responded to all the recommendations to a satisfactory manner. So that's why we felt comfortable deploying the bridge, and that they're still working on the report. So we try to talk to them a few times a week and be like, "Where's the report?" Right? So hopefully they can issue that soon. That's exactly what happened, right? So it's not. I'm sure they're super busy with other stuff as well. I don't know exactly what their scheduling looks like. Every team is probably stretched in terms of resources. We the best we can do is say like, please issue a report soon and blah blah blah, right? So we can also, for transparency purposes, tell them like, can you put into the report like kind of like we deploy. Well, you don't need to do that because in their report, they're gonna have GitHub hashes, right, on the versions of all the contracts that that they've audited. And you guys can just literally go check like the code that was deployed onto the Ethereum network as well as Taraxa network, fit with the hashes. I mean, it's not that hard to do. So you can trace it literally on chain, verify it on chain, right? So anyway, we take security really seriously. We did not go through 2 rounds of audit just to ignore the recommendations. That's obviously not what we did. We made sure we responded to all the recommendations. They signed off on it. They're just taking a really long time preparing the report for some reason. So anyway, once the report comes out, anyone can verify the deployment of the contracts against the hashes in the GitHub. So it's pretty straightforward. why is Taraxa not listed as a chain on DeFi Llama, Dex Screener, Dex Tools? So for all of these aggregators, well, first of all, it's very important for Taraxa's DeFi ecosystem to represent it on these aggregators. We talked to all of them. We read their documentation. You need to actually, it's actually up to the DeFi protocols on the ecosystem to integrate. The layer one itself, like there's nothing we can do to integrate it. Like there isn't a quote unquote layer one integration. The way the integration works is that as soon as the first DeFi protocol in a new layer one integrates with them, that layer one's automatically listed. So it's not like rocket science. We got confirmation from all these the project teams, right, that are running these aggregators. They're very open about it. They're very open documentations. So yeah, so we're gonna get this done. So we're trying to convince obviously all the DEXs that are currently on Taraxa to integrate with the aggregators. If they need help, we're happy to help out. But ultimately, it's their DApps, so it's up to them to do it. Best we can do is just say, hey, please do it more quickly, right? And offer any help that we can. It's very very important. We're asking these DEXs to do it every day, every other day, yeah, and the DeFi protocols have to do these integrations themselves, basically. Yeah, it's not like the layer one team contact them. Like we literally contact all of them. They're like, "Why are you talking to us?" Like, you get the DeFi protocols to talk to us, or they don't even need to talk to them. They just need to integrate, write the SDK, push it into like a pull request in GitHub, and their team will just review it. Right? That's just how that's how it works. So it's pretty straightforward. All right, so we have answered all the questions that were submitted ahead of time. Let's go look at what people have asked here inside the spaces. What was the website? Oh, okay, so that was already answered. Twitter score. So TWI, it's Twitter SCORE. Anyway, someone already answered. It's part of the thread, the reply thread here in the spaces in the spaces tweet. So twitterscore.io. Everyone should check it out because we weren't aware of it until a few months ago that such a website existed. We were looking for something like this because we couldn't get the raw data for Twitter. Yeah, anyway, it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. And I think everyone can get a lot more educated. Like, even if you're not running a project, right, you're just like, somebody following an influencer, you should check your influencer score, right? I mean, literally, you should check it and compare that influencer score against other influencer scores to figure out just how much you should listen to this person, right? It's not easy to get a high score there. It's not easy. It takes a lot of time. New influencers, there are a lot of influencers out there, like, look at it, be like 800,000 followers, lots of tweets, blah, blah, blah. You go on there, look at their score is like 5, right? What does that mean? That means most likely either your followers are fake, right? And there aren't anyone serious following them either, right? So I think this is a very helpful website for everybody, even if you aren't running a project. So, check your influencers, look up your influencer score. And don't stop listening to people with extremely low scores, right? I think that's really the lessons here. DEX listing, we talked about Uniswap, pools and DEX. Yeah, pools and DEX, we already talked about that. All right. Well, if there are any more questions, obviously feel free to reach out to us in our social channels, and you can reach us anywhere. So thank you for tuning in, and yeah, please stay tuned for more exciting developments, obviously, in the Taraxa ecosystem. Thank you very much. Bye.